Dear students, welcome back. In this video, we are going to discuss another comparatively easier topic. First of all, we are going to discuss halo effect. Again, halo effect. Trust me, the concept is really easy. So let's take a look at the definition first. However, before I show you the definition, just as before, I'm not going to follow the bookish definition. Rather, I'm going to give you a much simpler definition to understand. Alright? So here it is. Halo effect is the tendency to see one good characteristic or trait in a person, usually through a first impression, and based on that characteristic, assume that the person has many other good characteristics, even though in reality it might not be true. Let me go back to the blue marked and the red marked portions. So first of all, what happens here is you see or observe one good characteristic in a person. So you see something really good in a person, alright? And based on that one single characteristic, you start assuming that that person has many other good qualities. Or maybe you start having an overall good impression about that person. Now, don't worry even if you haven't understood the concept, alright? I'm going to explain this concept with an example very soon. So for the sake of this example, let's assume that you are an interviewer. So you are an interviewer in an organization and you are going to take interviews of job candidates. Now, when you are sitting in your room waiting for job candidates, the first candidate comes in. And this is the first candidate. This is the very first candidate of the day. Now, he's very dashing and cool, right? He seems like that. Now, he looks like a really well-dressed guy. Now, as soon as he walks into the room, your first impression about that person is that he is a really smartly dressed person. He knows how to dress really well for a job interview. So this is the one good characteristic that you see in this person the very first time. Now, listen to me very carefully. If you start thinking that yes, this man is so smartly dressed, right? So he must be really hardworking as well. He also must be a really good presenter. And at the same time, based on his dress up, you also assume that this person might be very rich. He also might be really professional and smart, and maybe you also think that this person is an extrovert. Now see what you did there? Based on one single characteristic of smartly dressed, you are assuming many other good qualities in this person. So maybe you also start having an overall good impression about this person. And that's what halo effect is. So again, based on one good characteristic that you observe in a person, you are assuming that this person has some other good qualities, even though some of these qualities are completely unrelated. For example, being smartly dressed does not mean this person is really a hard worker, right? Now, please note, in halo effect, even though we assume that this person has so many good qualities, in reality, that might not be true. Why? Because it does not necessarily mean that a smartly dressed person is also going to be a hard worker, or he is going to be a professional person. Why? Because after this person joins the company, it might be the case that he's all about dress up. He always dresses up cool and really smart looking. However, when it comes to working, he is not a professional person. He always delivers work late. He always comes up with excuses and whatnot. So yes, the point that I'm trying to make is that even though in halo effect we assume that this person has many other good qualities or some other good qualities and we start having an overall good impression of that person, in reality it might not be the case. Now, let me give you another example. The example is very fictional, alright? Now, the example that I'm going to give you, I'm sure many of you have seen it in many Hindi movies or Bengali movies. So, for the sake of this example, let's assume that a college-going girl has dropped off some notebooks on the floor and there is this really good guy who runs to this lady and helps to pick those up. Now, seeing such a helpful guy, the lady starts thinking like this. Wow, he's so helpful, right? Now, she observes this one single characteristic, and based on this one single characteristic, she starts assuming that yes, this boy is also at the same time honest, caring, compassionate, and also understanding. So in summary, everything is good about this guy. So she starts having a really good impression about this person. And maybe something like this happens between these two. So this used to be a very common story in many of the Hindi and Bengali movies, and I'm sure all of you know this. So yes, this might be a very good example of halo effect. So now I'm sure all of you understood what halo effect is. Now let's move on to the next concept, which is Horn's effect. Again, Horn's effect. Trust me, this is exactly the opposite of halo effect. So what happens here? Let's take a look at the definition. It is the tendency to see one bad characteristic or trait in a person and based on that characteristic assume that the person has many other poor characteristics, even though in reality it might not be true. So see, here what happens is you see something bad in a person or poor in a person, and based on that one single characteristic, you start having an overall bad impression about a person. You start thinking that yes, this person has this, and this poor characteristics or bad characteristics as well. So this is exactly the opposite of halo effect. Let's take a look at the example, all right? Now, for the sake of this example, let's again assume that you are an interviewer. So you are sitting in an interview board and waiting for job candidates to come in. This time, this person comes in first. I'm sorry for using this photo. This is just fictional. It is for understanding purpose. So yes, your first impression about this person is that yes, this is a really poorly dressed person. Now, based on this one single poor characteristic, maybe you also start assuming that this person is lazy, poor, irresponsible, brainless, and whatnot. So see what you did there? Based on one single characteristic of poor dress up, you started having an overall poor impression or bad impression about this person. That is how Horn's effect works. So now that you know how Horn's effect and halo effect works, try to avoid these sorts of bias and obviously don't apply halo effect in these sorts of cases, alright? So yes, we are done here. See you very soon in the next video.